Welcome to Your Pharmacy Career Podcast, proudly produced by Ravens Recruitment, the experts in pharmacy career and locum services for over 30 years. Every episode is your gateway to new opportunities in the pharmacy profession. From expert advice to inspiring success stories, we're here to spark ideas, guide your career, and help you achieve your goals. Stay tuned. The next step in your pharmacy journey starts here.
Welcome back to Your Pharmacy Career Podcast. I am Christy Lee Patterson and your host as usual. And today's guest has generally seen pharmacy from every angle. Emi has been a community pharmacy owner and has worked across hospital and international pharmacy and has even made a move into industry and TGA regulatory work. She now runs her own medicine advertising services and consultancy and helps pharmacy businesses and pharmacists help build advertising strategies that are compliant and effective. And I think that's very relevant in today's world. Emi, so welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Christy Lee.
So Emi, I always start the podcast by asking my guests what got them into pharmacy in the first place. And so could you shed a little bit of light onto how that journey happened for you?
When I registered or chose to do pharmacy at Sydney University, it was actually I finished high school very young. So I was you just turned 17 by the time I'd had to decide what degree I was going to be doing. So I'm glad that I chose pharmacy, but it was a rushed decision. But I think it came from an interest in health and science for my subject choices, as well as languages. So communication and health, I suppose. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That said, my first year in pharmacy, I was not sure I was enjoying it. I did not like those stats and math subjects at all, but I persevered and turned out for the best.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And gosh, 16, 17 seems so young to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life. I mean, I've changed what I wanted to do so many times already throughout my career, so glad it worked out for you. Now, Emi, I feel like in the pharmacy industry, there's a bit of a feeling that once you become a pharmacy owner, like you've made it, and you were a community pharmacy owner for some time. And so maybe you could just share maybe a little bit about your experiences as being a community pharmacy owner, and then maybe touch on what led you to move out of being a community pharmacy owner? Because I know when I was first decided I wanted to do pharmacy, my goal was to move back to Mudgee. I grew up in Mudgee and started working in pharmacy there. And my goal was I can't wait to get back to Mudgee and buy this pharmacy off the pharmacist. And then I never went back to Mudgee and I never bought a pharmacy. So, tell me about that period of your life.
Well, community pharmacy, I do love community pharmacy. I loved the years that I worked in that. I started off, my intern was in community pharmacy. I had a great preceptor and my first early years were in community pharmacy with a group. I started in Sydney, but then heartbreak and I decided to travel Australia and go, and I took a role up in the Northern Territory and worked up there. I was lucky enough within that same banner group and was lucky enough to get some exposure to hospital pharmacy through that. So I got to dip my toe into that. And then I did a little bit more travel in Australia, working in different pharmacies and then overseas. When I came back to Australia, eventually, I again returned to community pharmacy and loved that, and then had the opportunity to buy into a business, but in the end, bought the whole thing in the end, and then bought one business and then another one and another one, really heavily reliant on the wholesalers at that point. But it was a great opportunity for me to get started and worked through with those businesses, and obviously absolutely multitasking the whole time. I bought a house, built my family, 3 children. So it was very, very busy period. But
not just one pharmacy, but multiple pharmacies as well. Goodness me.
And then I suppose I really don't know why I ultimately got out of for ownership. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time. The competition was changing. The model that we'd been working with, really service-oriented, was being eroded by competition in the area. And there were a lot of pressures, but would have meant changing a lot of the ways that we'd been working. The staffing numbers, the amount of service that we could provide was being challenged. And I couldn't see that it was going to be exactly what I wanted for that much longer. So sold those businesses and then had some time off. And then once my youngest one started school, I decided I did need to get back into doing something with my time, and was really fortunate to get a role within an organisation that have been since renamed. They're now called Consumer Health Products Australia. So, I don't know if you know, there's like the Medicines Australia group, and then there was a Consumer Health Products group, and they had a delegated role from the TGA, so the Therapeutic Goods Administration, a delegated role to assess healthcare promotions and ensure that they are compliant with the Act and the regulations. That was a mandatory step for anyone that wanted to put an advertisement on TV or in a magazine or on radio or anything like that. It had to be pre-checked, basically, by myself and a colleague doing that.
So that sounds really interesting. Now it seems so obvious that a pharmacist should be doing that type of role. But I guess at the time, how did you even get into that? Like, it's something that I've known you for a while, and just seems to be your bread and butter, but I almost feel like it is a little bit random, to be honest.
No, truly. I was interested in the role because working in community pharmacy, you see a lot of people come in asking a question about an advertisement that they'd seen, and each person will see the same information on a current affair, for example, and they'll come in with a different interpretation of what that product or service that was being discussed was about. And so I could see there's a real gap with what people take out of an ad, basically. And that's what the legislation is there to protect, to ensure that, or to help ensure that the same message is received by all people. But even with those regulations and in place, people do still take a little bit different out of each ad that they see. And I wanted to be there to support I now support industry, but also supporting the government and supporting the consumer in getting the right messages out of the advertising that they see. So I really enjoyed it, and I'm so pleased to be able to continue to do that type of work.
I almost had to laugh when you mentioned a current affair, and I'm just reflecting on, as soon as there's something on the news or I'm sure you remember the TV shows like Today, Tonight and those ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
There would always be some sort of, new product or something happening. And you could guarantee that the next day that customers or patients were coming in asking about it. I actually remember the first pharmacy I ever worked in, and one of the staff members, I don't think it was one of the pharmacists, I think it was just one of the other pharmacy assistants. She's like, oh yes, I watch, I think at the time it was Today, Tonight or a current affair every night, just in case patients come in, because otherwise I have no idea what they're talking about.
Yes, I do remember reps coming in and saying, this is going to be on Today, Tonight next week. You sure you don't want to buy 6 or something like that, just to have on your shelf to answer those requests? So.
Yes, it really was. And I feel like now, probably rather than a lot of the companies utilising those channels on TV, like yes, TV advertising is still something that is done, but I feel like it's now all the internet, right? Social media.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep. It's very much an area that's explored by a lot of people at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. And I really want to dig into that area, but I might just hold that thought for now, because I want to understand. So you were working in that role and then now you have your own business, but how did that happen? Was it something that at that time, like obviously you had your own businesses before the pharmacies. So being an entrepreneur, being a business owner is something that is clearly something that's a part of you. But did you see instantly when you first took that role that this is something I can actually make this into something? Or was it maybe, again, something random that happened? Or like how did you make that transition from working in that role to deciding, okay, I actually think there's an opportunity here to go out on my own?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because when I took the role, it obviously was a massive, massive learning experience for me to learn acres and folders of legislation and interpret and understand all of that. So I'd put a lot of effort into being excellent at what I did.
There's no AI when you started that role, I don't know.
No. So I was fully immersed, put my heart and soul into it. But then there was a legislative change that made the role redundant. So I found out that, and I wasn't aware of this when I took the job, but I don't think it would have changed my decision. But it was ultimately the writing was going to be on the wall that the role was going to be redundant, and it was made redundant. And that's when I had to make that decision. Well, what am I going to do now? And having worked in that space, and as a TGA delegate, you are very restricted with what you can or how much support. Can't give any support basically to an advertiser. The role was to say whether the material presented was compliant or not compliant, could be published, could go to TV or not. And I had a stamp and I would say approved, sign it, and then the person would be able to put that on TV or put it into a catalogue. If I couldn't put the stamp on it, I was not able to give advice as to why it was not compliant. I could suggest that there were some areas that they look into amending, but I couldn't say, all you need to do is change that word or take that off, or let's reframe that or change the imagery or something like that. I was not, as a government delegate, you can't do any of that. You can't be involved in business decisions.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah. So I was able to, as soon as that realization struck me, I thought, look, why don't I have used this expertise for businesses, but be able to provide a lot more consulting advice and support in speeding up the process. Basically, they can get the ad compliant without going through hoops So that was good.
Yeah, wow, and having to go through redundancy, that's also just a little bit scary too, right? Because it's like, what do I do now, as you said?
Yeah, I think I had so much going on in the rest of my life, though, that it was another one of those things, 3 kids, business still going on, lots of things in my mind. And that was another one to deal with. And I had to just make that decision, right? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to go for it wholeheartedly. And I remember being up late, so still trying to work, being up late at night, building my website, writing the content, doing all of that sort of thing. A lot of connections and reaching out to people that I thought might be of support. And that's something that I'm incredibly grateful for, is the people that gave me a go, my early clients that saw the value in what I could do and trusted me, and also other people within pharmacy that I know this person or this skill set. And that was really helpful as well. I started out from a base of nothing, and it went really well for the first 6 months or so. But, I was doing locums in hospitals. I was doing locums in retail. I was staying up late doing my website, doing work, meeting and greeting, going to conferences, telling people what I did, getting as much traction as I possibly could. Yes, it was a pretty exhausting time. But then I did get an opportunity with a friend or someone I'd worked with in the past suggested me for a contract role within a pharmaceutical company. And I took that job as well. And that was a 3-month contract that extended out to 6 months. And then when they asked if I would like to stay on, I said, look, I'd love to, but I really 100% want to give this business a go, and a red hot go. So I said no to that. And then, put my foot down a little bit harder on building business. And I got some really great opportunities, a couple of times speaking up at the APP conference, doing some other conferences here and there, just talking about, again, these rules around the advertising that a lot of pharmacists, I don't know, maybe must know that they exist, but how to navigate them is a little bit of a challenge for a lot of people. And then after I sort of got my systems in place, the pharmaceutical company approached me again and said, would you like to try again? And I said, you know what, I reckon I can do this. I can do everything. And so I do still work with that company now as well, part-time, and I do my consulting part-time. But that, I'll still some mornings need to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning to get some work done for both of everything that needs to get done. But we're all like that, right? Everyone has to get pushed.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can just totally relate with everything that you were saying. Like even, when starting to build the business and doing the locuming and working on your website at nighttime, like, yes, I've been there, done it, still doing it. But I think the great thing with our industry and being a pharmacist is that we have that fallback, that we can do that and have the flexibility. Because I feel like, I know myself personally, I don't know if my risk appetite, if I was doing a different role where I couldn't just locum or pick up shifts here, there, and do all these different things to help supplement my income while I'm trying to build a business. Yeah, I don't know if I would have gone in and started a business. I don't know. But I just think people that are listening, and yeah, I think we're really lucky that we've got the ability to be able to do that.
Yeah, and it's the backup plan is a really good backup plan. It's a very rewarding backup and enjoyable. So you can, and like I said, you sort of alluded to, you can do them both at the same time. You know, you can still have your business or side hustle or whatever level of effort you want to put into it, as well as working in the community pharmacy or in the hospital shifts or whatever.
Yeah, well, even, when you mentioned that you're doing locum in hospital, that was a little bit surprising to me, only because I've never worked in hospital pharmacy, and I didn't realize that there was locums in
absolutely.
pharmacies. So yeah, there you go. It's not something that's just unique to community pharmacy as well. So maybe anyone listening, you could even potentially do some locum work in a hospital.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah. No, they've all got their bank of locums that they phone up, and yeah.
The other thing that kind of has stuck out to me, I guess, if you're looking at what you do now and maybe someone that doesn't know you or what you've done, and they might look and think, that you've left pharmacy, as in our pharmacy industry, to go to the pharmaceutical industry, which is funny where they're so intertwined, but they are quite often regarded as two separate industries. And I understand the reasons for and against that. But when we were just preparing for this podcast, you mentioned to me that, you haven't left the pharmacy industry. You are still in the pharmacy industry. And I think that's a really good message to get across, that, you can still be part of the pharmacy industry and do different things.
Yeah, no,
Do you share the same?
Yeah, I very much feel part of pharmacy world. You know, keep my registration up. I stay on my membership with the PSA. I'll, go to conferences. I still liked, I've obviously got some friends who university friends, or through other ways. I met a lot of people with retail pharmacies, for example, and I still stay connected with them that way. But I do still feel and describe myself as a pharmacist. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. And also it's just so important for people to hear that you can do different things or dip your toe into something that you might think is completely different in the beginning, but you can still 100% be part of the pharmacy industry and try these different things. Now, I first came across what you did and people like yourselves do when I was working for a banner group during COVID. And I think during COVID and I don't know, maybe it's the same for other pharmacists, but it certainly became a realization for me as to how we promote services as opposed to just products. Like, I think I've always understood that what is advertising, and you're advertising a product. Like, here's a product and I'm going to put it in a catalog. I'm going to put it on a TV ad or something like that. I understood that as advertising, but I don't think advertising around services, I don't think I'd made that connection yet. And it wasn't until I think maybe pharmacists started doing more vaccinations, and we weren't allowed to say which vaccine brand we have. But then COVID came around, and then the
TGA changed the rules. Yes, I was up on stage in front, talking up at APP, explaining the rules and very confidently saying exactly what the rules were. And then 2 weeks later, like probably just when the recording was released, the rules changed. So it looked like I was saying the wrong thing. That's like mortifying. But anyway.
But even just being, across that, like it's just something that, I don't think I really, maybe I did touch on it at university and I don't remember.
I don't remember anything about advertising at university.
And I remember there was, I don't know, there was something that had to get reviewed, and someone was like, we get Emi to review. I'm like, who's this Emi? I'm like, she sounds like she's just knows everything about, anything relating to pharmacy and advertising. But that started opening my eyes as to how important it is, though. And I think that's kind of when I myself personally started becoming more aware of what I also on social media and things like that.
Absolutely.
Because and this was really evident during COVID times as well, because if as health professionals, whether you're a pharmacist or a GP or something like that, there was cases I'd heard of health professionals either losing or potentially maybe looking at losing their APRA registration because they were saying things that maybe didn't align with what the evidence is. But then also too, with the rise of social media and things like that, a lot of content creators, it just kind of blows my mind that a non-health professional can basically say whatever they want. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is kind of my understanding, is that if you're not a health professional, yeah, you can say whatever you want on social media and you can do sponsored posts and advertisings. But if you're a pharmacist or a health professional, we have different rules that we need to follow. And it's something that, I know there's lots of people on social media, lots of pharmacists that are now using that platform to either promote what we're doing as pharmacists, which is great. Like, I'm all for it. But again, it also kind of concerns me a little bit because, how do we know what we can and can't say? And I feel like this could probably be an APP session in itself.
Pharmacy Daily is a proud supporter of your pharmacy career podcast. If you're in the pharmacy world, it's a great resource to stay up to date with the latest industry news. To subscribe, just head to pharmacydaily.com.au to get the newsletter delivered straight to your inbox.
I'm sure maybe you've got some thoughts on that. Well, I'm sure you do, but could you maybe give some insights as to how we can manage that as pharmacists? And I know that's a big question, so that's a big answer, but feel free to answer it however you like.
Maybe I'll break it down a little bit, I suppose. So you're 100% correct in that pharmacists or any health professional do have this extra level of scrutiny and extra level of responsibility. Yes, health professionals, they might be promoting a clinic service or they might be promoting their personal brand. They want to be seen as an expert in that area. And social media, as you know, can get great traction. And it is really good to have these qualified people talking about health products rather than the assorted influences you mentioned earlier. You do, yes, there is that level of scrutiny, both from a TGA perspective and the APRA perspective, to ensure that the message is not misconstrued by the audience.
I think with social media, it's 100% public, right? And so what you put out there, even if maybe your main target audience is other health professionals, other pharmacists, and maybe I could give an example as maybe you're providing maybe some tips on how to study for an exam, right? Or something like that, and you're talking about medications and things like that. And it's probably unlikely that the algorithm would show that to a consumer, but there is still that risk, right? And so as pharmacists, we probably need to attack it in a number of different ways, like not just I'm a pharmacist and but my target audience is other health professionals, so it's not advertising. But then maybe you might be putting a post on behalf of your actual pharmacy that you work for. And so I'm sure then there's different things that you need to consider. Like, I'll give one example, and this is a question that I have. Say, for example, you're maybe doing a meet the team or something, right? You're filming a staff member. They're talking about, I'm Christy Lee, I'm a pharmacist. I've just started working here and blah, blah, blah. But they're doing it in front of products, right? They might be standing in front of maybe the vitamin or maybe they're standing in the dispensary, and unintentionally in the video, you can see packets and products. Is that something that we should be considerate of? Like, I just wonder that sometimes, because when you're understanding what is advertising and not, even though our intention might not be advertising, the TGA and the rules that we have to abide by, it may actually be considered advertising.
Yeah, you'd have to be really careful. I mean, you standing in the store, hi, I'm Christy, behind and with the vitamins behind you, I can't see that being an issue at all. If you're standing in the dispensary and saying, I'm Christy Lee, I've got a passion for pain management or something like that, and then you can see the medicinal cannabis sign or something like that, then that's when it would be a level up. So that, just off the top of my head, a random type of an example. The example that I was thinking about was, I'm Christy Lee, I'm actually going on holidays. and this is what I need to take. So walking around the shop, picking up your hydrolyte, picking up your face mask, picking up your bits and pieces. I'm going to take this. I'm going to an area where sanitation isn't so good. I'm going to need all this. That would be construed as a healthcare professional endorsement of those particular products that you're grabbing as you're walking around the store.
Oh, interesting. Right. Okay. Because I guess, another look at that could be, I know, I was going to say what's in the bag. You know, you're saying like, what's in my handbag? And I'm a pharmacist and these are my favorite products. And maybe there's a lip balm, but then it's like, my go-to products. And you start pulling out those things. And I know that, say, for example, if a drug company has sponsored you to do that ad or something, you then have to disclose that, right? You have to put sponsored post or something. But if they're not, and you're just talking about a product, and I think the answer will be yes, but that's considered advertising, right? Because if you can see a product.
Yeah, it will be taken in context, but you don't want to. My advice would always be, if you're going to be a selection of products, you'll want to be providing information. So you're going to have a variety of products. It's not going to be one that you're focusing on. Another example would be get ready with me in the morning. So the pharmacist waking up in the morning and this is what I do. I have to have a coffee. I have to walk my dog. I have to have a Barocca, that type of thing. So that would be an endorsement or a testimonial of the product. And now look at me, I'm in the business. I'm getting through my day, powering on after all of these things. So that could easily be considered an advertisement for a product. Whether it was sponsored by a company is irrelevant. It's you are promoting the product.
Okay, that makes sense. And so it's kind of, you mentioned around that context. So like I said before, if just happen to be in the pharmacy and you can maybe see some blurry products in the back and you're just talking about something completely different, then obviously that's not. But if you're talking about it in the context of, like you said, that pain and medicinal cannabis, or maybe you're standing in front of the vitamin wall and talking about probiotics and there's a huge range of probiotics or something in the back like that, that's when the line gets blurry.
Exactly, yeah.
So I feel like this can be quite a complicated area, and you could probably get very, I guess you could almost say purple pen from your hospital days. But just for your everyday pharmacy, maybe they want to start doing some more things on social media for their business. So it's not a personal page and they just want to start, promoting the services that they're doing in the pharmacy. How would you advise them to go about that? What are the things they need to think of or be aware of?
Well, absolutely, to be aware of the rules. I mean, that's going to be the starting point. So knowing and having a good grasp of what they can and can't do, being structured about how they're going to do it, being mindful of what the objective of the whole practice is, because it's not a zero risk endeavor. And just, I suppose, and when you said earlier, they're going to do it on social media, any media is advertising, whether, we need to think of the whole thing as advertising, not just social media. Putting a poster up on the wall in your pharmacy, that's advertising as much as putting big post on your huge company Facebook page. They're both the same rules apply to both of those instances. So like I said, starting with knowing the rules, that's number one. Yes, there's obviously going to be a few things to be mindful of when you are putting any content on social. Like you mentioned earlier, it is a public, even if you think it's private and you feel like it's a social little casual chat with your community. Yeah, this is a public platform that anyone can see, and you ought to be very mindful of what you're posting and the appropriateness of what you're posting. So yeah.
So where can pharmacists go to find out the rules? So you mentioned they need to be aware of the rules. I'm guessing, should you just type into Claude or ChatGPT, hey, what are the advertising rules? I'm sure there's proper websites where we can go to get that correct information.
Yeah, I do believe a lot of people are trying that and certainly putting their content through those platforms. But to start with, the TGA's got some great guidance and APRA has some guidance. So there's definitely hubs on those that both focus on both of those websites that give a lot of information about the advertising and the rules around it. And I expect that the AI draws from those, but AI is not going to be able to get those little nuances that we've talked about earlier and be able to explain that to whoever's creating the content for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you still need to, well, it's like if you put anything through AI, right? Like you still have to have that knowledge and understanding to be able to identify that output, right? So
a lot of the banner groups have got people on board that are mindful of the regulations, so they create some generic content. But I do appreciate that a lot of pharmacies want to make their own stuff to make it relevant to their own audiences. So the generic stuff's great, but if you want to make it personalized, yeah, it's going to be better.
Do you have any advice for maybe some pharmacists that may be wanting to start a consulting business or just do something a little bit different, and maybe some things that they need to be aware of when making that decision, the good and the bad?
I'm sure everyone tells you, and when you ask that question, everyone says, oh, it's going to be hard. And it is hard. I think for me, one of the hardest things was, which I don't like to admit, but was believing in myself and believing that I could do it. We all talk about imposter syndrome and that type of thing. And I was thinking about that, and it's not even imposter. It's just self-confidence. I do like to, it's not imposter. So I trust yourself. If you think you can do it, give it a shot. Kind of what's the worst thing that can happen? It doesn't work. Well, at least you've given it a shot. Yeah.
And like what you said earlier, what's the worst thing that can happen is your backup plan is.
Exactly. No shade. And we all, you've learned something from it. You've grown your mind a little bit and you've given something else a try, and it could go great. Or you could, even when I started out, I thought I would just be looking at advertising and supporting advertisers with their content. And it's expanded so much more now what I do, and the spectrum of clients that I'll get range, quite dramatically. It could be someone making a supplement and just wanting to expand the claims that they talk about. It could be a drug company wanting some expert advice on how to get the permission for their product to be advertised for a particular indication. It could be a clinic wanting to screen their website and make sure that they're compliant with all of the regulations about how to promote their service. So yeah, so different.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Emi, we're coming to the end of the podcast now, but is there anything that maybe we haven't covered that you think is really important that you need to get that message across to pharmacies, or maybe even potentially maybe just some last words of wisdom that you want to share?
No, I think the most thing, certainly along the lines of what we've been talking about and advertising, be aware of what advertising is, being aware that a sign in your window, a photo, talking about your services, all of those types of things can be advertising, and just be really careful how you're promoting them, because I suppose because I get all the notifications from the TGA, but they really are cracking down. They've changed a lot of the rules around compounding and promoting that. And they do a great job putting out guidance, but they do also put out a lot of notifications about the fines that they're giving to people and passing on, and their compliance and regulatory focus areas are very, very closely aligned to what a lot of pharmacies are doing. And if you're on, or your business or your content is on their radar, which everything is because they use AI, you need to be mindful of what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much, Emi. I found this really, really helpful, even just personally as well. And I think those examples that you spoke of will really give the listeners something practical that they can take away with. One thought I've just had, I guess, if you're thinking around what things can be classified as advertising, making sure your team is aware of this.
Absolutely.
That you don't need to understand the detail of it, but just being aware, because we know in pharmacy, especially community pharmacy, we've got a lot of young staff members as pharmacy assistants, and quite often they'll do the displays, they'll be putting up posters, they might be, whereas you mentioned that you might be part of a banner group and where they send you this stuff and you can be kind of assured that someone else has checked that. But now with Canva and things like that, a lot of the time I see in pharmacies that I've locumed in, or like, oh, can you get the 15-year-old to, hey, can you create this thing ever for me and pop it onto social media? And they always do a great job because they're so much more attuned to how to use these softwares, but just making sure that they're aware, like, again, that just make sure the pharmacist has a double check of this and things like that. So they don't need to know the detail, but just making sure that they get a second pair of eyes over some of the things.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things that I've been thinking of throughout our discussion is, I think I'd be safe to say that majority of the time where there's maybe things where maybe as an industry where we haven't maybe been compliant or sat on the side of the fence that's we're about to tip off into that non-compliance thing, I don't think anyone's doing it intentionally. It's just a lack of sort of understanding. And so I think that's one thing, everyone's doing it with good intentions.
Yeah. No, that's the crux of being a pharmacist: ethical, compliant, trustworthy, and that trust is what your customers, your patients love you for and keep coming back to you for. And that's something we definitely want to strive towards pushing and, achieving.
Well, thank you so much, Emi. It's been wonderful speaking to you. And so if you do want to reach out to Emi, we'll put the details to Emi's business in the show notes as well. And you're on LinkedIn, I assume. And so I'm sure you wouldn't mind people reaching out to you directly as well.
Thanks for tuning in to Your Pharmacy Career Podcast, proudly sponsored by the Pharmaceutical Society of Australia. The PSA is committed to empowering pharmacists through advocacy, innovation, and industry-leading professional development. To become a member or learn more about how the PSA can support your career, visit www.psa.org.au. Don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast with your colleagues, and join us next time as we continue to explore your pharmacy career journey.